Hi, this is Mary Burke Kelly, and this is a video for my students on how you would ground someone else and how you would do three treasures on someone else. We're also going to be including some posterior points that we have not included before. Particular exercise, you only need the two mid-ohms. These are the gold colored ohms. And if you have the mid Mars and Venus, that's what I'm going to use for part of this. So if you don't have the Mars and Venus, you'll have to use the ohms for the whole thing. But if you've got the Mars and Venus, that's great. So I'm going to be showing you how to find the points. If you are not familiar with the points, I'll be using stickers and close-ups on this. I'll be using some techniques, and this is exactly, how I would teach it if you were here live. So if you're doing this in distance, of course, you don't have a body, so you wouldn't use stickers. You would use some sort of surrogate, and remember, you'd be working on the body template, but doing these same things. So I wanted to cover how you would begin a grounding if you're working with someone and they're face down. So you're a massage therapist, or you're an acupuncturist, or you're whatever you are. Maybe you're just doing a family member and you're going to have them starting face down. So I want you to understand how to hold the forks and use the forks on a posterior grounding. And so this is how I usually start my clients out. I have a tendency to clear their back first, and then I turn them over. Okay, so you would activate the tuning forks, and you let the person hear them so that you don't have to wait for the vibration to leave the forks. You just let them hear them so that their body kind of knows it's coming. If you're doing distance, you might want to put them in the microphone a little bit so that they hear them that way. So the very first thing we're going to do then is ground. We have had the person hear them, and our grounding points that we've already covered are going to be Kid 1 and Kid 3, and let me show some close-ups on that. Okay, so this is to help you find Kid 1 and Kid 3 on someone else that you would be doing, a family member, a client, and do the grounding on Kid 1 and Kid 3. So you're in order to find Great Ravine or Gushing Spring, you're going to go to the inside of the ankle, and between the inner ankle bone and the Achilles tendon, there's a divot there. Now, if the person is retaining water, there'll be less of a divot than a person who does not have edema, but there still is a divot or indentation because chi always has an indentation, and so you have a Great Ravine or Kid 3 on the one ankle, and then you would also have it on the other ankle, which you won't be able to see from that camera angle. So we're going to use those Kid 3s as our first grounding point, and then our second grounding point is Kidney 1 or Gushing Spring. And so this is where the yin of the earth gushes up into us, and it connects to our earth chakra. So therefore, down the line, if you're using low forks and you're grounding with low forks, even if you don't have time to do the Gushing Spring, Kidney 3 up here, you're going to want to at least do the Kidney 1. Always do Kidney 1. The whole idea here is that you're going to ground always from the upper part of the body down. We want to bring the yang down. We want to bring all the energy up in the head down, and we want to ground the person and de-stress them. So you can activate your two ohms. All right, and there's several ways you can do this. You could put the two ohms together 3 times on the right or left Kidney 3, and you could go ahead and you could do 3 times on the other Kidney 3, and then you could come down here in a simple way, and we're working down the body and connecting to the earth chakra. You could do 3 times on the Kidney 1 And then you could do 3 times on the kidney 1. Now that's the simple way of doing it. Another way of doing it is you can put 2 on the kidney 3 and let that vibration go in until it almost dissipates. You don't have to wait until the vibration completely leaves the forks, but you try and let all of it go in and then almost dissipate. And then I can go ahead and I can put 1 on each of the kidney 3s and let those vibrations go in, and then after they go in, I can put the 2 on the other one. So each of those kidney 3s have gotten 3 iterations of forks. We have a tendency to do things in 3 iterations because it just gets the chi moving more the way we want to do it. Then I could lead if I want to. This is called leading. So I have the forks activated, they're vibrating, and I put the 1 on the kidney 3 and I'm starting to lead the chi down, the yang down, and connect it by having 1 on kidney 3 and 1 on kidney 1. All right, and you kind of let them dissipate, and then I end up with 2 on this side. And you could do the same thing over here. You would be putting 2 on this side, let them dissipate the vibration, then you lead them, okay, and then you put 2 on the bottom. And I have a tendency to like to then end up 1 on each one. I kind of like to leave the person a little bit balanced at the very end. So that would be, you know, a different way of grounding. Now, you know, there's really, you can be very creative with your grounding as long as you know the grounding points, the kid 3s and the kid 1s, and eventually we'll teach you some others up here on the upper body. But as long as you know those grounding points and you're using the 2 ohms, which are grounding, you can be as creative as you feel like at the time that you're grounding. So I just showed you 2 ways of doing it. Another way of doing it is, I know some people who like to do a whole circle. They like to do sacred geometry. So they start here and then they go here and they're leading, and they go here. Then they do this. See how we're leading and we're making a circle? And they make a circle. Okay, and so they've made this circle and they can join it back up, but then they have to still come back down here. So some people like to make a circle. Some people like to do an X, because an X in sacred geometry then makes an infinity. So some people, like, they'll start with the kid 3 here and they go across and make an X, and they start on the other kid 3 and they go across, and then they end up down here doing it like this and like this and like this. But it's, the whole idea is just to always end on kid 1. And we're also teaching you that at the beginning of every Acutonics session, the very first thing you want to do is ground, because that's going to bring down all the yang, all the stress. The person's just going to, like, whether they've come in from, I've been in traffic, or I've had a bad day, or, you know, I've been with my kids, or I'm overthinking everything, or I'm anxious, doesn't matter what is going on. The very first thing you do, even if you're a massage therapist, an acupuncturist, or a facial person, it doesn't matter. The very first thing you're going to want to do is ground the person. So that's a simple, like, posterior grounding. Now, what I want to do is show you several techniques for doing what, going down the Watu Jaji points. And on your practicum, what I have you doing is I have you sending this, doing this for your partner. And what I would like you to do is first go down once or twice with the 2 ohms, so that your partner gets a full grounding through their entire nervous system and sacrum. And then I would like you, if you have the Mars and the Venus, to go ahead and go down these Watu Jajis and sacrum with the Mars Venus. So I'm going to show you different techniques for treating all these Watu-Jaji points. Now, all these Watu-Jaji points, and remember in Acutonics, they can keep their clothes on. If you're doing just Acutonics, it goes straight through the clothes. They do not have to have their clothes off. So we start at the mid-neck, the cervical vertebra, all right? And we start, remember these Watu-Jajis are on both sides of the vertebra in the in-between spaces. And so we start at the cervical vertebra, we go all the way down these, the thoracic, the lumbar, and we go right through the sacrum all at once. So I'm going to start up at his, and I can show you one technique is for you to just go on either side of the spine, hands this way, so the camera picks it up two different ways. Okay, so you can go very straight down. You can the sacrum, you'll feel that it gets harder. One way of finding it is to put your hand here, and you'll feel this hard bone, and it is like an upside down heart or butterfly. It starts wider. So when we're taking our forks down here, we start wider and we get more narrow and more narrow and more narrow until we get to the end of the sacrum. Okay. So we come right down on this technique where we're just following the outside of the vertebra, and we keep going with down the sacrum. All right, now it is like an upside down heart or butterfly. It starts wider. So when we're taking our forks down here, we start wider and we get more narrow and more narrow and more narrow until we get to the end of the sacrum. Okay, so we come right down on this technique where we're just following the outside of the vertebra, and we keep going with down the sacrum. All right, now that is one technique. Another technique is some people very slowly, slide these down. That's another way of doing it. The way that I do it, and I'm going to use the Mars and Venus so that you can see perhaps a little bit better with the colors, the weaving that I'm going to do. I like to weave because this, first of all, feels really great for the person. It feels really relaxing, but it also puts in that spiral, that DNA helix as we're going through the entire nervous system. Now with Mars and Venus, you're going to have to be conscious of which one you hit or activate first. Okay, you always want to use the lower or the longer of the two tuning forks. So if you're not sure, you can always put them on a flat surface somewhere and see which is taller. All right, and the taller or longer fork will always be the lower one. That is the one you want to hit first. Now, in most cases, in levels 1, 2, and 3, when you're using ohm with the colored forks, it's always going to be the ohm. In this case, it's going to be Mars. All right, so in order to get the perfect harmony, the perfect fifth, you have to activate the red one first and then the pink one, okay? And this is called weaving. I'm going to let him hear this fifth because it hasn't been on his body yet. And you start again at the mid-cervical, up in the neck, and I'm weaving. I'm going back and forth, and forth, and the place I just was, the other fork goes, and this might take a little practice when I was first starting out. The place I just was, the other fork goes, and this might take a little practice when I was first starting out. Okay, now they're out. So that's the other thing I wanted to explain is when you're working on a real body, depending upon how much of this energy the person needs, the vibration will leave the forks either very quickly and you have to reactivate and just go back to where you were and keep going, or maybe they don't need the energy as much, so it won't go out as fast. So in his case, it went out there. So I'll go back and I'll finish my weaving, and it's really great to weave these foramen, these little sockets or holes that are down here on the sacrum, because this is where all our RNA and DNA is stored. The extraordinary vessels come in there. You've got a nerve nexus there. So it's very important for times of transition. We do the whole thing. We do Watu-Jajis right down the sacrum. All right, so there's a weaving. If you weren't going to weave these two colors, then what you can do is, if you feel more comfortable on somebody, just going down, you know, with the red on one side and the pink on the other, you know, then when you would do your next iteration, you would switch the colors in your hands, all right, so that the other side gets the red one and the side that didn't get red gets pink, okay? So if you're not going to weave, you have to make sure you do, you know, at least 2 layers. Now, I am the type that when I do my clients, I do 3 iterations of every interval that I'm putting in here. All right, so that's different techniques and using basic forks on the Huatu Jaji points and the sacrum. What I'm going to do is turn him over, and when I come back, I'm going to demonstrate the 3 treasures on the front or the anterior, and then also an anterior grounding. I have him turned over, and what I'm going to do now is the 3 treasures. So we already talked about the 3 treasures, but I want to show on another person how you would find these points. Now you can find the apex of their ears, okay? So you find the apex of the ear and the apex of the ear, and then put your like index finger or middle finger on the apex of their ear, and then bring your thumbs up like you're looking at, you're putting a headband on someone, and right where they meet would be due 20, the point of 100 meeting places, which is the opening or the portal to the crown chakra. So that's, I'm not going to put a sticker on there. I think you can, because it doesn't stay in the hair very well, but that's one of our points for 3 treasures. Our second point, or the middle point for the 3 treasures, is Ren 17, which is the actual portal for the heart. It's about, I think it's in the 4th intercostal space, almost lines up with in a male, it'll line up with the nipples. In a female, it will not. So I'm going to go ahead, for the sake of this video, and I'm going to go ahead and mark that with a sticky so that you can see where I'm putting the forks. This would be his Ren 17 original child, which is there. And then the last point is Ren 4 Origins Pass, which would be 4 of his finger widths, whoever you're working on, not 4 of your finger widths, but 4 of their finger widths down from the navel. So one of the things you can do is you can ask the person, these are little tricks, you can ask the person, if you want to give them their privacy, can they point to their navel? So can you point to your navel? All right, so he's going to point to his navel, and I can mark that. I'm going to mark that with a little stone, and then he can relax. He doesn't have to do any more, all right? But it would be 4 of his finger width down from there. That is the point that I want, is Origins Pass. So one of the things I can do, because my clients are usually sleeping, is I can take my hand, all right, their hand, and I can see, you know, how many fingers wide. So I want 4 finger widths to find this point. Well, his are bigger than mine, so I want maybe another half of my finger, all right? So if they're sleeping away, I can go proportionately like that, and I can put the 4 finger widths down here, and I know it's going to be a little bit more than that. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this. All right, and if you were doing this on yourself, it's your own 4 fingers, but it's 4 fingers of the person you're working on, because everything is proportionate. So that's how you would find these points. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the forks on them with the different techniques that you can use. Just pick one of them when you're sending this or doing this to someone. So on the 3 treasures, I'm going to use Mars and Venus because I think that Mars and Venus for the three treasures, it works really, really well with the hormones, with the putting the head, the heart, and the gut together, and all the different things that three treasures does. If you don't have Mars and Venus, then you use the 2 ohms. So now it doesn't matter. I think in your material we're going to start with Ren 4, so I will start that way. It doesn't matter which of these 3 points you start on. There's different, so an easy way of doing it is activate the red and activate the pink, and go ahead and put it down here on Origins Pass, and you could do that 3 times, all right? And then, you know, like I said, you wait for the forks to almost dissipate all the vibration, but not all of it. You don't leave them on there forever. And then you take them off and do it again, take them off and do it again. And then you could come up here to Original Child, Ren 17, and you could do that 3 times. And then you could come up here on your D20 on the crown chakra point and do that 3 times. That's an easy way of doing it. Or you could do the opposite. You could work from the head and come down to the heart and come down to the gut or Ren 4, all right? That's another easy way of doing it. The way I like to do it is, and this is a little bit more complicated, but I like to always let the heart be the mixer. Let the heart be, the heart is everything, all right? And in Chinese medicine, the mind is actually housed in the heart. So what I do is I will sometimes start on the Ren 4 and then I lead. Okay, so leading would mean that I can take then on my next iteration, the red fork may stay down here on Ren 4, the pink one comes up to the heart, and say that I let them both dissipate. So there goes the interval, but I'm leading up to the heart. And then on my next iteration, I go ahead and I put 2 of them on there. And then I may lead up to the do 20 next, where I go ahead and vibrate the forks. I keep the red one on the heart, and I bring the pink one up to the crown chakra, or do 20. And I let that vibration get soaked in like a sponge. And then I'll bring the 2 of them up here. But I always try and come back down at the end to the heart, all right? So I come back down, and the very last thing I want to be on is my heart. And sometimes, you know, I'll get the intuition to do it the other way. Sometimes I'll start on the head on 3 treasures, and I'll lead with the red one. It doesn't matter. And come to the heart. I may come down to Ren 4 and then I come back to the heart. That's the way I do a lot of mine, but I always leave it with the heart as the mixer, the one that is pulling it all together in, remember, perfect harmony, which is really hard to get in planetary sounds, but you have it with Mars and Venus. So that's 3 treasures. Go ahead and do that for your partner. And then at the very end, this is just a way, now we're going to talk about, if you were doing a regular, this is almost set up like a little mini Acutonics session. In other words, we grounded at the beginning, we did some back work on the Huatu Jajis and the sacrum, we turned the client over, we did 3 treasures, and now it's the end of our little mini session. So we're going to go ahead and ground. And normally when you have a body, I like you to learn how to do this because the feet angles for the forks are different when the person is face up than when they're face down. Because the feet angles for the forks are different when the person is face up than when they're face down. So I still have my grounding points marked. I'm not necessarily teaching you the points here because we've already covered that. What I'm going to do when I go to ground, when I'm done with my session, is we want the client to hear the ohms again, because we've been using all kinds of other forks. We've been moving all this energy up to their head, bringing yang rising and all that. So now at the very end, after we've used all our forks, we want to bring them down. We want to bring them back from the Wu Chi and the place of wholeness, and we want to ground them so that they can drive and they can function. So again, you're going to want to do whatever your preferred grounding is with putting 2 ohms, those are your grounding forks, on Kid 3 Great Ravine, and you would go ahead and do however you like to do it. I have a tendency to do 2 on one side, 2 on another. I'm letting the vibration go in until it's almost all soaked in. I'm going to do 1 on each side. And then I'm going to, I like to lead the chi down. Okay, so I'm doing this on the close-up so you can see how I'm leading this. All right, I do the one side, I do the other side. All right, and then I have a tendency to put 2 down here, and then I let them go in, and I put 2 here, and then I end up with 2 like this. All right, and that is the end of your practicum, and then it'd be time for your partner to go ahead and send to you. One of the techniques that is good to know when you're doing more and more acutonics is when, in the beginning, when you're grounding at the feet, people have a tendency a lot of times to go like this. Now look where my heart is. My heart is away from the client. You want to have as much heart connection and as much heart resonance as possible. So one of the ways to do that is that when you're grounding, which I have not shown you a whole lot because of the camera angle, is when you are grounding, it is good to, if you can, you actually turn these forks around, and this takes some practice, it takes some technique where you can see that I'm supporting at the yoni. This is the yoni, and we don't want to come too far up on these stems or we'll stop the vibration. So I'm putting my middle finger on the yoni, and I'm supporting the stems of the forks. And normally they are asleep and they are totally out of it when you're doing a full session. Okay, so one of the things that I do, this is an advanced technique, is my index fingers are sticking out farther than my forks. And I come down here with a warm human finger, and I stick a warm human finger on there so that they're not going to jump and feel cold metal at the end of a long session, because I may be working on the person an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. So the very first time, yes, I let them hear them up at their ears so that they know it's coming. I try and put a human, I'm holding them like this, supporting them with my fingers. I use the index finger to put on the point first, kid 1, and then I slide the metal in so that they know it's coming and they don't jump. All right, so that's just a technique that you can develop over time. The other thing that it does, since I'm standing down here at the bottom, I am heart connected to my client.